According to Politico, nervous world leaders greet Biden at NATO. You're worried if he knows which direction he's going, which is always a good look. According to Politico, the contrast couldn't be starker. President Joe Biden, physically and politically frail, presiding over what could be his final NATO summit at a moment when the alliance has never been so strong. NATO officials are both saddened at how Biden's fortunes have turned and frustrated the storyline has distracted from what was to be a celebratory summit. They are also increasingly resigned to his defeat this November. Now, the reality is that the Europeans, and I'm talking with a bunch of people who are at all the parties with the European diplomats at this NATO summit, and what they are saying is that the Europeans behind closed doors, they're not all that worried about Trump. They already had him as president. They can work with Trump. They know they can work with Trump. All this sort of end of world, Europe is on fire nonsense. It's not true. And as it turns out, Joe Biden has been a horrible foreign policy president. One senior European diplomat said, quote, everyone's focusing on Biden's appearance and less on Trump's statements about NATO. That's true. Again, it is not just people who are saying this behind closed doors. Perhaps the most hilarious video of the day came courtesy of Giorgia Maloney, who is the prime minister of Italy. So Joe Biden showed up late to an event, and Giorgia Maloney started rolling her eyes and glancing at her fake watch that doesn't exist. There she is. She's glancing at her watch, and she's annoyed that Biden isn't showing up. And finally, she rolls her eyes, massive eye roll, crosses her eyes. She's like, I can't believe this schmuck. And again, not a rare occurrence, unfortunately, on the international scene these days. We kept hearing about how Donald Trump was an embarrassment internationally. I'm going to tell you a secret, guys. The dead president, usually dead presidents appear on dollar bills, not still in the White House. Meanwhile, Biden did an event with Keir Starmer, who is the newly elected prime minister of Great Britain. And I got to say, I don't know what's going on with Joe Biden's face at this point. It ain't good.
Congratulations. England.
What is he doing? What is he doing? What is this weird old man doing? What is that weird old man face? It's just terrible. It looks like a parody of himself. That, however, was all lead up to the worst moment of Biden in the NATO conference. And that was his introduction to Vladimir Zelensky, the leader with whom he has been closely allied in the Ukraine versus Russia war. This is about as big a screw up on an international stage as I have seen. It's really quite bad. Here is Joe Biden yesterday.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
And everyone claps. And then he's like,
we're going to beat President Putin.
He's going to defeat President Putin.
I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
I'm better.
You are a hell of a lot better.
Zelensky's like, I cannot believe this. I cannot believe this. I mean, that is the equivalent of during World War II, Churchill visiting and FDR being like, I'd like to welcome to the podium Adolf Hitler. And you're like, what in the world? What? Huh? Really? So not a good look. Like, if they're not interested in getting rid of Biden, then why exactly are they spending their time poll testing Kamala Harris? But apparently they are. The problem, of course, is that Kamala Harris is really, really bad at this. So she was on the campaign trail. She was talking about how Joe is a fighter, which, I mean, dude can't punch his way out of a paper bag at this point, but sure.
One thing we know about our president, Joe Biden, is that he is a fighter. He is a fighter. And he is the first to say, when you get knocked down, you get back up. You get back up. So we will continue to fight, and we will continue to organize, and in November we will win.
Okay, but there's one problem. Kamala Harris is utterly charmless, and I don't know what it is. She has this weird verbal tick where she talks about exploring possibilities unburdened by what has been. It's like she just does it over and over and over. She sounds like Kylo Ren from The Last Jedi. She's like, well, if we get rid of all the old people, then we'll be unburdened by the past and we can explore the future together. That's like the bad guy message. That's the bad guy message in The Last Jedi. Terrible movie, but apparently Kamala Harris was in it. Here she was doing the routine again with the full facial expressions, with the hands, the whole thing. Ay.
They taught us that we could do anything. And should never be burdened.
Never burdened.
By the limitations of other people to be able or not be able to see what can be. And this is that community who
Oh.
understands and can see what is possible unburdened by what has been.
Unburdened by what has been. Want to go into the future, which is that's where we go forward into the future, not backward into the past, like with the time machine, unburdened by what has been. Ooh, that's a delight. Honestly, best presidential insurance Joe Biden ever had was making that lady vice president. Jen Psaki trying to make fetch happen. Here she is now trying to talk herself into the idea that Kamala Harris won't be a terrible candidate if Joe Biden has to drop.
Kamala Harris, the vice president, I'm going to call her vice president now because I keep calling her. She is like, in my view, an undervalued talent. She's a very fierce communicator. She's very strong, especially on one of the core issues that made the election maybe won or lost on, which is abortion rights. And they said, this is why I think when she did a couple of interviews after the debate, I was sitting on the set with a bunch of other NBC anchors, and everybody was like, that was great. It's like, yeah. That's what she's doing out in the country, and nobody is really tracking it. It's just, that's who she is. But there is a character out there. It's almost like public opinion hasn't caught up with what she is doing out there. And also, we live in a country that is sexist and racist. So like, there is that. Not everybody at all, but there is a level of it that does impact elections.
It's the sexism and the racism. That's the reason no one likes her. Not that she's utterly charmless and horrifying at her job. Really, keep going with this, guys. You're doing just great. You're just doing awesome.